Hello, everyone. So my name is Keabetswe Boccomino of Afrinova. I am a South African curator, interculturalist, and founder of Afrinova. Thank you all for being here, first and foremost, and thank you to our panelists, excuse me, who will be joining me for this conversation on Beyond the Canon, Diaspora, Creativity, and Cultural Power. The whole concept behind this talk was just to create a platform where creatives that are based in Switzerland and are of African descent can share their experiences, share their stories and journeys, but also amplify the visibility of the local community, which is really showcased or shared on a global stage. So hopefully from here on, we do realize that there is a Black and African powerful presence in Switzerland, and we are here creating all day, every day. And yeah, please, let me just get right into it. We have 3 panelists that will be joining us. Sinzo Anza is running a bit late, but I will continue to introduce him. But first and foremost, we've got Joshua Amisa. Joshua Amisa is a gallerist, author, curator, and cultural mediator. He is the founder of Gaze Contemporary, a digital gallery championing emerging and mid-career perspectives while fostering more inclusive, accessible, and equitable structures in the intersectional ecosystem of contemporary art. His practice critically examines power structures in visual culture, exploring themes of representation, identity, and systemic narratives. An honors graduate of the Zurich University of Arts, he studied fine arts, photography, and design with a focus on identity and trend forecasting. Amisa curated the Black Art Matters exhibition in 2020, which is still Switzerland's largest photography exhibition, exclusively showcasing works by over 70 Black photographers. From 2019 to 2025, he served as co-curator of the Photo Schweiz, and in 2025, he developed Gaze Contemporary, a project that led to his inclusion on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list in the Arts and Culture category for 2025. Congratulations. Extensive portfolio.
I love really talking about
This is just a bit on Joshua. Joshua has done so much more, but I feel like we will get into it as we have this conversation. And then we also look at Sinzo Anza, who will be joining us. Sinzo is a Congolese artist whose works focus on the radicality of fiction. In 2007, Sinzo created a radical fiction. To him, he assigns the responsibility for the intersections between his creations, first literary and then visual, and the equally frictional social frameworks in which they encounter, discussion, and projections around all the other inventions developed by men to frame life. Its understanding, organization, and projections become possible. In his writing, Sinzo tries to investigate the political situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as the constructed image of this country, which has always belonged to investors, preferably foreigners. The exploitation of natural resources, the representation of national identities and their excesses, and the construction of the image of the Congo since the colonial era are themes that nourish both his visual and literary works. And then to Tracy September, who is with us. So Tracy is a South African performing artist, sound practitioner, researcher, and curator currently based in Zurich, Switzerland. Her first language is music. With influences of jazz and electronic experimentation, she has particularly a strong passion for improvisation as an invitation to surrender attachment and trust the capacity of one's intuition. Drawing from her Xhosa heritage, her performances serve as a medium for storytelling, archiving, and ancestral custodianship. By crafting enigmatic and emotive sonic languages, Tracy's sound and musical works are deeply rooted in ritual, community, and communion. Whether through live performances, sound installation, radio productions, DJing, or sound design. Her sound-based work has led her to festivals and stages such as Theatre Spectacle Zurich, Schaus, please help me with this, Schaus Spielhaus Zurich, Venice Finale, the South African State Theatre, the National Arts Festival of South Africa, and Kunstmuseum Appenzell. Tracy also speaks other artistic languages and dialects that include theatre making. Welcome, Tracy. Welcome, Joshua. And thank you for being here. Okay, so let's get right into it. My first question always has to do with the foundation of your creativity, the journey that has led you here, to which you are, I would say, recognized for your artistry and your craft. Could each of you please tell us about the journey that led you here as an artist, the point where you became aware of your own artistic force and voice?
Okay, I guess I'll go first. It's very interesting. Ellen was asking me earlier about a project I was working on, and she was like, so how did you know that you would be sound-based or around sound? And I told her that, well, firstly, I always say sound is my first language, or music is my first language. And I've been sounding since birth. Like I came out the womb sounding. And my hearing is my strongest sense. So I hear what I see, I hear what I taste, I hear, like it's just my first language. It's the way my instinct is led. So I think just knowing that I perceive the world mostly through my ears is how I began to explore expressing myself through what I heard, which goes through my body, which came out from my voice. And it was when other people would comment on it and recognize that what I was doing with what I was sounding was creative, that I thought, okay, maybe this is something that I should explore creatively, and here I am.
Here you are, and you do it beautifully through multifaceted experiences and engagements. Through performance, you've been able to capture audiences. Yes, so tell us more, Joshua. Tell us about your journey and when did you become aware of your artistic force and voice?
Firstly, thank you for the invitation and for the beautiful introduction and for putting all of us together. I think having rooms like this these days is very important. And I really love what you just said. I wouldn't call sound my language necessarily, or not my first language, but I thought it was interesting what you said specifically because it just made me think that specifically for you and a lot of artists out there, sound is a way to express yourself, and I feel like this is the root of my output as well, just trying to find words and channels and projects that kind of, I don't know, make certain feelings tangible and make them visible. So yeah, I think this is where it comes from. I grew up as a person of color in Switzerland and not being part of the majority of society, class-wise, culture-wise, and there was just a certain dissonance, I would say, and a lot of contrast and a lot of hybridity. And I think this is kind of something I try to put into my books, my exhibitions, my gallery, this kind of hybridity and the in-between spaces, and trying to find words or sounds or whatever it is for these in-between spaces.
I think that's very powerful, where all of these artistic disciplines actually do intersect. And in order for us to communicate experiences and give voice to this intangible, we have to make it tangible in some way. And yeah, I love the fact that the visual and the sound in this case can also inherently, come together to create powerful experiences. Yeah. So I It's unfortunate that Cynthia not here, but you know, we will pause and wait. I wanted to also find out about your artistic process, practice, and power structures that are involved within that space. How does your process intersect with social or systemic narratives? What do you amplify? And what frictions do you face? Tracy, I would ask you, can sound create resistance? You've spoken briefly about sound as resistance, but also, can it be a safe house?
Can sound be a safe house? Huh. Well, I think, like, if you just think of the way the body works and vibration and like how sound impacts you physically, you know, there's something about when the beat drops. There's something about when the crickets are sounding, you're like, oh, what's that? But like, it's a physical reaction, right? And we all sound all the time. There's always sound. And then when you have intentionality to that sound, I think that's when it can become a chorus of movement, momentum, and resistance. So if you think of like protest songs or freedom chants or...
Which are very popular in South Africa.
Yeah, you know, like I remember the first song my mother sang to me is a song called Nansi Ndotemnyama, which is like, here comes the black man, Nansi Ndotemnyama, and then you all sing it together. So those are my lullabies that informed my principles and values, you know? So I think, yes, but I also think all senses, all things that are perceived through your senses have potential for the momentum of resistance.
It is, it's powerful. It's also a way of remembering. The way you speak about vibrations is that innately something inside of you is woken up, right? And I think I want to add a question to that, because in South Africa, obviously protest and protest songs have been part of the culture in some way, to a point where even during mourning and festivities,
Or Trump playing it just a few weeks ago.
right, or Trump playing it just a few weeks ago, those become victory songs, but at the same time, the messaging actually has so much depth. How would you help people understand the nature of song and how to use it?
I think it's the sounds that are... It's the sounds that are created in communion, right? So it's the sounds that we make together when we are mourning. It's the sounds, it's the drum that you beat when you go hunting. It's, you know what I mean? That's, I think, where it starts. And that we have to do it collectively without the intention of artistry, but
Collective power.
we're trying, like, yeah, we start together and then you can break apart, but we start together.
Okay, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think then I would pose a question to you, Joshua. You curated the Black Lives Matter, Black Art Matters, during the height of Black Lives Matter movement in Switzerland. And when we speak about a collective echo of voices coming together in unison, your exhibition was powerful. What frictions did you face in putting that together? And also, what is the importance of visibility?
That's a huge question. I mean, I think it was tons of frictions, and I don't know, I think in whatever I do, trying to act within the systems that are just given. I mean, we just kind of navigate in a certain ecosystem, in a certain creative world, in a certain market that is always very Eurocentric, white, kind of like centered and male-centered as well. So it's always friction for me as a queer person of color. However, going back to this exhibition, I mean, I think biggest friction for me was the title. I didn't choose the title.
Black Art Matters.
Black Art Matters. Yes. I don't believe in this form of phrasing art because, yeah, what is black art? I mean, it's such a universal, non-specific way of describing it. I don't believe necessarily that there's something like black art, because essentially contemporary art discourse in Ghana is fundamentally different than what is happening in Congo or in South Africa. So I have difficulties with these terminologies and with these boxes. So this is one big friction I have. And you were speaking about visibility as well. I mean, I think we live in a time that there's increased visibility of a lot of marginalized identities, speaking sexuality, heritage, gender, class, whatsoever, in all of its intersections as well. And I think this increased awareness, visibility is good, but I do think the structures are lagging behind. Because it's not just necessarily about who is hanging on the walls, but also are these artists actually being supported fundamentally? Can they pay their rent? Or are they just hanging on the walls? And we had a lot of problems funding these exhibitions, and essentially it gave great exposure to a variety of artists, but we couldn't necessarily manage to actually financially pay everyone that was part of it and give them kind of long-term collaboration, let's say.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm trying to do now with my gallery, kind of really have a sustainable long-term collaboration and supporting people beyond just putting them on the wall for one show.
There's so many points to touch on from your response. When we talk about the Swiss experience, especially regarding institutions, I believe there are like a ton of challenges, obviously, that face artists. I will pose a question to you just now, Sinzo, but in general, everyone, what are the main challenges that you've faced, whether it's regarding representation, funding? What are the challenges actually that are facing our artists today that go beyond the visibility of an art fair, which is once a year? What sustains, our continuity, our continuous presence in these spaces? Please feel free, since you are please welcome.
No pressure.
And no pressure.
So hello everybody. I'm sorry I'm slightly up late. I had a small issue, health issue. So I'm very new, I thought, to start. I'm kind of just starting to get used to the called diasporic artist. I mean, I've been living in Switzerland only 2 years now, so it's very, very fresh. And I think I still don't see really the difference between being just the situation of being new in the space and being someone from another context in this specific context. So I'm from the Congo, and first of all, I'm a French-speaking person, so I language issue with German, having to learn High German among people who speak Swiss German. And yeah, then having to kind of work on my English so that I could be sliding slowly into a Germanic culture.
Yeah.
So it's I think Switzerland especially is a very interesting space regarding the question of space.
Yes. And you talk a lot about that in your work as well.
Yeah, so I think in my work it's different, because in the Congo, there was yesterday here a panel about from people of the Biennale of Lubumbashi, and this was interesting because these kind of initiatives in the Congo and in many African countries used to come from the situation of people, artists or people trying to express themselves, not having spaces. and needing then to create those spaces and to, I mean, it's not having spaces in an absolute way, not having exhibition spaces like galleries, museums, theaters, or editing houses, all the things, and having to think your artistic practice in a way that involve also being able to create the space. But then here the question is another one, because it's just that the spaces are expensive. You have these other spaces.
Or exclusive.
Or exclusive, yeah. And yeah, so I think in my case, it's just kind of continue to figure out what is part of being new and what is part of being from another context and trying to make it in this one.
Because, yes, you've been in Switzerland for 2 years, but you have actually been working with institutions, especially Museum Riedberg, where you investigated the archives of Hans Himmelhuber, and you contributed to the Congo as Fiction exhibition. Since your work looks at radical fiction, colonial legacies, and reimagining Congo's narrative, my question is, how does fiction help us to disarm these institutional truths?
Yeah, so actually this is a very interesting, it has been a very interesting game, I would say, intellectual game for me, because I have both practice as a visual artist, but also as a writer. And I have been, I mean, as a writer, I've been producing fiction, like writing novels or theatre pieces of plays, or sometimes collaborating with people doing cinema. So it's producing fiction, and then afterward, like trying to reflect on what is it to produce fiction, and what is how is it important beyond entertainment. And just, I mean, coming to then a criticism of other fictions that people establish, fictions that then are, I would say, like fictions from which people create their identities, or fictionalities also of nations, for example, because when you
Cultural, social.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, when you take a flight, you don't see borders between Switzerland and Italy and stuff. I mean, it is a space. It's spaces where people fix borders or limits, and then establish narratives, fictionalities that will build their identity. So I think it was interesting then to come to this institution and to see how people have been telling themselves the stories from Africa, because it is basically a space where you have different objects from different cultures. Africa, the
Oceanic.
exactly. And you have narratives that have been built from colonial area, and it's what there's this Congolese philosopher who has been calling this the colonial library, because it's a body of knowledge that have not only defined how people in Africa or in former colonies are perceived from here, but then since it's people from here who built nations there, or states there, modern states there, how then people started also to kind of reflect on it. And so it's a sort of aller-retour movement of building knowledge and fictionalities, because these were, I mean, it was point of views.
I think it speaks to the power of the imagination, right? Imagination and these imagined narratives that can be systems of exclusion, oppression, and gatekeeping. But at the same time, the imagination can become a point of resistance, which we briefly spoke about, and liberation. Do you see any of that coming across in your practices where you use imagination to redefine futures or redefine what could be possible?
Absolutely. I feel that all of my heroes, all of my ancestors, my people I hold dear, are incredibly imaginative and fictional, or fantasizing and living in a fiction or a delusion. I think you have to be slightly delusional to choose to create in the way we create and to try to say the things we want to say, because if we had to deal with like the reality of things as the map for whether or not we do things, it's like, this doesn't make sense. You know, like practically speaking, it doesn't make sense to choose this without dreaming something into existence.
It becomes an act of defiance.
It requires this imagination. It requires this sort of time travel, this futuristic existence, but also like a past life that's recurrent. Like all of these things, you just have to dream.
I love that.
I really appreciate what both of you just shared. It really, I don't know, tickles my brain in the right spot, because I think, to me at least, there's no art without fiction and there's no art without delusion, at least how I see it, and the artists that I like to work with, and what is important for my writing and for my curation and everything. Because, as I love that you mentioned delusion, because, I mean, how are any marginalized people going to survive in this world without being delusional? I think. I mean, there's just a clear power dynamic, and if you're not in favor and on top of the pyramid of a certain power dynamic, you basically mentally crumble with being aware of that. So the only way out to me is fiction and delusion. So I see fiction as well as delusion as a very powerful tool of resistance, of liberation, and of creating utopias and creating new systems, and trying to imagine a new status quo, a new way of being together, a new sense of authorship, community, belonging, whatever it is. So I think fiction is a very, very crucial part of the discourse. And some people are more calling themselves kind of like an artist working with fiction. Others are not really, but I think
We are all doing it.
everybody's doing it.
We are
Even if you
weaving
don't do
in-
art.
Yeah,
I mean,
a new reality to say, where our presence matters, our stories actually exist in an authentic way. And it's not only just for us, you know, it's for the societies that we exist within. We are not only creating points of relation and community for people that look like us, but it's a way to also take people along with us on our relative journeys. And I think this goes to you again, Joshua, in terms of building a new structure. You built Gaze Contemporary to challenge power and redistribute access. What's been the hardest lesson in building a fair system inside an unfair one? We already spoke briefly about the context of art in the society. So how do you go about creating a fair system?
I mean, firstly, the gallery was born out of an idea, or out of the observation that how kind of the general art market works. It's just a very unfair system, I think, specifically for marginalized identities. And if you're not born privileged, it's even difficult to enter the market. And also, to answer one of the questions you asked before, like one of the key things that we are unhappy with in this cultural art world, for me, it's the gatekeeping. I mean, even like going to art school already is such a privilege. Like, how are you going to even afford to be able to go to art school? So I think this is kind of a thing that is often overlooked, that it's just a certain very privileged 1% that can even pursue a certain creative path and creative career. So yeah, it's part of my thought process since a while of what we can change about these dynamics and how we can get more people to the table. I think one of the ways that I'm doing it is just that it's another redistribution of capital, I think. For example, if usually, I mean, it's kind of common that if a gallery sells an artwork of an artist, the gallery gets 50% and artists get 50% as well. In my case, the artist gets 70%, and I'm also working like an artist fund. So younger people can apply through like an open call and can get some money to invest into their practice and just I think redistribution is very important. So that's
I think that's very impressive, your approach. I think also because you are an artist, you understand the gaps that need to be filled. I will move to Sinzo again. When we talk about redistribution and equity, you've described Congo as a country belonging to foreign investors. How do you create in that tension? And what happens when art becomes just another export? We are sitting at an art fair where we do know that there is a particular way in which art gets turned into a commodity. How do you create within the tension of your country, and then what happens when art is turned into just another export?
Yeah, I mean, this is then was maybe the importance for me of that, what I call radical fiction, like just calling it radical means that you situate basically everything into fictionalities. It's a kind of weapon actually, because it means the way people look at you, the way you could be fixed in a place or something, you consider it according to how you could also fix other people, how you could situate them as well. Historically, I mean, we're considering, for example, how these knowledges were built. What was the situation? I mean, it makes you also work on Europe, for example, study Europe. Like, what was the situation in Europe? How were people living here? It was colonization, for example, happened in Europe just after the revolutions. So you had the fight here in Europe between the former nobles and the people. So it was kind of extension then of that noblesse up to the whole. I mean, the whole people here then applied to the rest of the world, kind of then inventing racism and all these things. So it's a quite interesting way then to to relate to the world. And in the Congo, for example, that thing saying that the Congo was, it was an accession from a novel I wrote, but it's also true because the Congo was created as a company. I mean, many other colonies in the world were extensions of territories, of the metropolitan territories. And the Congo was created basically as an independent state that belonged to a company. And that company had stakeholders. It was run by the King of Belgium and these things. And when you situate the creation of the art in that context and its history, there is this exhibition, wonderful exhibition that was here, When We See Us, for example. I think the When We See Us there is interesting, but it is somehow not really When We See Us, because you have many African artists are still connected to international markets. So it's not a radical When We See Us. And I think these kind of things are interesting to go through because it's also how you think yourself with the rest of the world, because
in relationship,
exactly, because with colonization and these things, slavery and stuff, I mean, words have been connected, narratives have been, in French I would say, se sont fécondés mutuellement. Like,
Personalized each other.
Yeah, fertilized each other, and so you have it's kind of difficult to fix people and to fix, and I think the Congo Valley for me is a sort of metaphor of this question: how you situate historical things, how you then put creation in that, and what it means basically to then create which perspectives it means not only for the people there because it's an international space also.
So creating different points of relation through the exploration of the Congo, basically.
Yeah, of its particular history, but then considering that particular history as a not only local history. Yeah.
Okay, I love that. I will move on to Tracy. Tracy, you've spoken about ancestral custodianship in sound. What does legacy look like when you live between lands, languages, and systems? And I think somehow that connects to the response that Sinzo just gave, where you're not just looking at your existence in a localized context, but as part of a global narrative. So my question is, what does legacy look like when you live between lands, languages, and systems?
So legacy to me is something that is continuously being created, but also lived. You know, like the moment a child is born, the legacy is created. So it doesn't start because of what I've done. It starts because of what I am being, like who I am. So when I think of legacy, I think of meaning. Like what meaning am I giving or adding to, let's say, the artistic landscape, or in my family, or in my friendships? What are the memories that people will hold in their selves, but also in like they're listening when they're listening to something I've done or a conversation I've had? You know, legacy can be between two people, it can be intergenerational. It's about always wanting to have or add intention and meaning in everything I do, i.e. in being who I am. Like if I am authentic to everything that is calling me, then the legacy I will leave behind will be palpable. You'll feel it in everything I do. And I think then when you become intentional about creating legacy, outside of it just being, it comes to, okay, when I think of the narratives, let's say in arts in Switzerland, what are the urgencies? So the urgencies for me are very different for the urgencies or to the urgencies of somebody who was born and raised here, for instance, right? And then I come here with what I think is important, and I have to observe my environment and be like, does it actually have meaning in this context for me to prioritize this urgency? And then I have to think, okay, if this urgency is burning me, but I am not in the land where this urgency belongs, how do I connect to that urgency, and how do I hold it inside of me in a way that it can kind of transmute all these things and still have meaning for me here, but never lose where it comes from? And that comes from holding my language. That comes from staying connected to the stories and the people, whether it's through the internet or whether it's through going home and working there, or whether it's with finding the same stories and urgencies with people who are here and us coming together and creating something. But I think there's something about intentionality that gives it even more meaning. And that's the legacy that's how I think about legacy.
It gives it power. And I guess this is also a good way to go to the last part of our panel conversation, heritage and legacy. I'm a very big believer of heritage and legacy. We come from many we did not make ourselves, but also as we live and breathe, you know, by proxy of us gathering here today, right now, history is being made. There is a story that will be told about each of us gathering and telling our stories. And how do we continue to add to the cultural continuum of who we are, but also our presence in the places that we find ourselves in. So my last question, if you could, each of you briefly answer before we take questions from the audience. How do you carry your heritage into the future? I think Tracy already spoke about intentionality, but also what does legacy mean, not only as an artist, but as someone of African heritage in Switzerland? Tracy basically answered those two questions, so I think I will take them to Sinzo and Joshua first. Either of you can go.
I mean, very big question. But I mean, legacy is such a big word. But for me, it's just the sum of like beliefs and thoughts and ideologies of the ancestors and the people who came before us. And I think the job of any cultural producers to kind of be aware of this legacy and all of the discourses that had been happening for hundreds of years. I believe also the conversation we're having right now people have been having exactly this conversation for hundreds, if not for thousands of years. If it actually ends up in the archives, that's the other question. Because who created the archive? Who stored the knowledge? Who necessarily also potentially destroyed the knowledge that has been created in the last hundreds of years? I think this is one of the dimensions that's very important not to forget about. So I think it's crucial to actually, as you do, for example, like go into the archives and put thoughts and beliefs and approaches and frameworks into perspective with contemporary discourse. And I think this is essentially what then creates the future, kind of creating, combining the present with the past. And this will answer some questions, but it will bring up a lot of new questions. And I think all these new questions then, for me, are what future then is about.
I love that. And Sinzo?
I think I can say it better than that. It's I think like the legacy. I think as a contemporary person living in cities, basically I've been living in Kinshasa, in Goma, Lubumbashi, now in Zurich, in another city in the Congo called Butembo. So and I'm from a family that has been living for many years in countryside in the Congo, being farmers and stuff. So it's for me, it's also about how you create intelligibility, understanding, through what can sometimes be folklorized.
Folklore, yes. Folklore.
Because that what happened, the most terrible thing I would say that happened to Africa and African people is the folklorization of what was there before colonization, like denying, for example, what are called now ethnies or tribes and stuff, their full nature, the full nature of nation. Because when you see how these ethnic groups are organized, they are full nations, and the question of then how you create understandings of how logics of the living were built there, and how they can dialogue with logics of living now. This is basically the biggest way to assume and honor your legacy.
Yeah, thank you for that. We don't have time for it, but I think this is also one of the most important points, that as we are navigating these contemporary spaces, there's so much more to excavate in the form of inherent knowledge that obviously didn't get the visibility or credits that it could have historically. And perhaps this is also a moment for us, to honor histories, but also think about ourselves as makers of history. Yeah, so thank you all for being here today. Thank you for this fantastic conversation.
Thank you for having me.
And everyone that came out to join us. Thank you. Yeah. I think we have a bit of time for questions. For those of you who'd like to pose 1 or 2 questions to our panelists, please feel free. Anything at all. Yes?
Sanbanani, it's nice to be here. And I know as I was sitting and I was listening to you guys, I have this, it feels like such a wrong question, but why are we here? No,
I think I believe
it really feels like a bizarre question to be asking, but from everything that you've all just kind of expressed, you know, even from being a Black person who's lived in Switzerland your whole life, or coming from Congo or South Africa, where things are still so difficult, where it's still so hard for us to, I feel like, why are we still dying? So like, I look around the room and it's so great to be amongst other African people, but also these conversations are conversations that we've been having, that we know, you know, these are things that we're experiencing all the time. So I'm asking myself, why am I here? You know, why are we here?
In Switzerland?
In Switzerland, in Europe, in Americas, I don't know, like, why are we still struggling so hard? Is it better to be working here than back home? I guess it's safer, but it's also, there's still this capital exclusive, this trying to translate ourselves, this trying to make ourselves valuable, prioritized, all of these words that you guys have been giving us. Like, I wonder, sorry, not to be a doomsayer, but it just...
No, it's such an important statement and question that I feel we've, in our own private conversations, are continuously trying to make sense of, right? Where we know that our presence is not necessarily as valued, but we do know the value of who we are and what we bring to these spaces we exist in. Perhaps it speaks to opportunity. You know, it speaks to this whole ideal of greener pastures. I think anyone, not just us as Africans living in Europe, it could be anyone that goes into a job, a career, where the assumption is that it will be better based on someone else's value systems. And somewhere, somehow, you realize that you've sacrificed too much of something, whether it's your creative spirit or the right to exist authentically. And then we start having these conversations. We are not the first, I don't think we are the last. But it is important that we do gather and have these conversations so that other people also can find points of strength, encouragement, and relatability, most importantly, community, through these. But I don't have the answer to your question. Yeah, I don't.
I mean, I think people are here for different reasons, right? And those reasons are very personal. So if you're here because you had to seek refuge, because you came from a war-torn place and you know, that's a different reason to, oh, I fell in love and this is my person and my kids are here. Like there's the spectrum of whys, or rather the spectrum of why we stay is so different. So I can only speak from my own personal experience. And I think why I am here, or still, is, I mean, Swiss happened, and I moved here for love at a time, but I also start to think about the cosmic magic that's ever present. I'm the 3rd generation in my family to have transited through Switzerland at a certain point. So then I feel like this is a place that we all, like it's a train and we all like pass by. Do I see myself growing old here? No. Do I feel that I need to be here right now? Yes. When will it be enough? Potentially soon. But I think it gave me a quiet in my brain from a different kind of noise. It also gave me the room to really appreciate what I had. Like, home is great, you know, and there's certain things that have led me to see that here. You know, like in my own life, I don't have elders, I don't have children. So it's like, okay, the value of the cultural system of having elders, mutual responsibility and accountability, the song, the food, you know, all of these things. I'm like, okay, and maybe I didn't value it as I should have at the time. But I didn't have to flee home, you know, I didn't have to leave. So I think I can only speak from a very personal reflection of the why.
Yeah, and I think it's impossible also in this context to ever find an answer to this kind of question. I mean, so I'm not even going to try to find an answer, but something that informs my work and my writing and my practice is actually questioning these notions of home.
Yeah.
What is home? Like, where do I return to? This is me specifically, like I'm speaking as kind of like a hybrid culture kid. Ghanaian roots, German roots, Swiss roots. When I'm here, I'm the black guy. When I'm in Ghana, I'm the Swiss guy. When I'm in Germany, I'm whatever. You know, like, so what is home? Where do I return to then? I mean, for me, it's not necessarily even like a geographic place, but more a place of belonging and feeling comfortable and feeling safe and feeling as part of the community. And if you want to see them on a more like meta level, then I think this is what we're having right now. So for me personally, this is a sense of home in this very moment. I feel comfortable. I feel like I feel seen, and I hope it's the same for everybody that's on here and also for everybody in the audience in a certain way. It doesn't necessarily answer the question, but I think this is then home, like coming together and creating rooms and having conversations at eye level and unfiltered. And yeah, so I think this is what home is for me.
Actually, I used to like, there was a figure of, in the Bible of what they were calling the, I mean, in English it should be the lamb of sacrifice or something.
The sacrificial lamb.
Sacrificial lamb. Yeah, you know, when the society is dark somehow, and then they just send that lamb in the desert. I mean, this is a place of art. I mean, it's a art fair, and I think we were invited here as art practitioners or creators, or I mean, all the artists or creators or thinkers I've been meeting in any society now have been people trying to make sense, trying to make sense from broken societies or from even perfect societies, but that could be something else. But it's about, yeah, it's basically that. It's trying to make sense as sacrificial lambs. That will suffer. I will suffer at the lot on their way of making sense.
Wow. I think that's it. Yes, let's do one more question, please.
So this kind of serves to segue from the last question, but I think in musing where we are right now, we're at the fringe of Art Basel, which is in itself an institutional imaginary, which is centered around the idea of commodification of artists, especially from the global majority, and the extraction of the work that we produce and the labor that we put into creation. I'm new to this geography. Like, I'm trying to understand it a bit more. I'm from South Africa. I live in South Africa, West South Africa, and I'm really interested in how artists in this geography, all of you to some degree are working from afar. How do we start to democratize and take ownership over the platforms for our own expression in this geography, where it almost feels like sharing work and being part of this industry is a negotiation with institutions that have a lot more power over artists than I'm used to in the geography. And I just wanted to get on you.
Once again, a very good question. I mean, we're in Art Basel, in the context of Art Basel and of Africa Basel and the art markets. I always see it as like neoliberal hell, and it's very much with its, I don't know, there's its very own rules and its ways of then forcing you to assimilate into a certain environment and everything. And I can just speak of myself. I'm very tired of these dynamics, so this is why I'm mostly just trying to create my own ecosystems and my own communities. And of course, I'm very happy to collaborate with institutions and spaces, and also be more unapologetic. And I feel like back in the days, I would always like just be like, yeah, we can do it. Like your institution, your rules. But I just stopped doing that. I started being more aware of the fact that I can also use the power of my voice and kind of be like, hey, we can do it according to how I want to do it, or I'm just going to switch out.
And that's the value of your presence.
How do you mean?
Your presence is that valuable that you actually shouldn't have to negotiate, because without your presence and contribution.
Yeah, everyone's presence is
Of
very
course, we're not
valuable.
generically speaking, but I feel like there's ways in which the industry can somehow minimize the impact and contributions that artists make, especially institutions, because if you frame it in a sense that we are giving you an opportunity, you're also inherently giving them an opportunity to engage with a different narrative. So that is the value of your presence.
Yeah, I think it's being aware of this duality of things, like being aware that I'm being used, but also me using them. I think it's very much about this as well, and I think it's often something that's not really talked about so much. But of course, it's always a certain way of using, specifically like a black body or a queer body, and putting them on stage. It's important to be aware that you're being used, but then it's important to also see what you can take out of it. And yeah.
Anyone else? How do you feel?
I mean, yeah, there's not much more to add to what you said. And I think it was an interesting word that you used in the beginning was it's the game, you know? And as you're saying, you know, so we all recognize what we're doing in this game we're playing of like, I know it benefits you for me to be in this room, but I also know that I can get something from it. So it's this kind of thing. But I also feel that with the nature of migration, there are more of us who have created ways in which to gather and practice in a different way and start to have these conversations of how do we, what do we say, juba the system? How do you say juba? It's like how to like dance within it and navigate within it without compromising yourself completely. And these conversations that happen over, you know, dinner tables, that happen on dance floors, that happen, you know, in the sun, just to have conversations like, hey, sharing resources, like, hey, what are you doing? And, you know, and I think this is something that I also know from home. So it's bringing these hustler skills that are inherent and like, how do I hustle this? And like, how you hustle? And how, you know, like the game.
Yeah.
As you say, and I think this is what you have to do here is because there's no way you're not going to be played with. You know, they play.
It's one way to play the game. I think that calls for the end of our panel. So I don't know if you wanted to add to this, to this last point. Thank you so much. Oh.
We're just hustling.
Oh, after all that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.